Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Shikamaru Hiden, a cloud drifting in the silent dark. Konoha Chapter 3. And that concludes our meeting. Does anyone have any questions? The host of the session asked, his tone disinterested. Shikamaru listened with closed eyes. The bespectacled chairman was a shinobi from Kirigakure named Chojuro, and Shikamaru remembered that he had guarded the Mizukage during the Great Ninja War. It seems that no one does. So, Shikamaru? Chojuro prompted from one side of him. Opening just his right eye to look at Chojuro, Shikamaru nodded slightly before opening the other eye. 10 ninjas sat at the round table, men and women, mostly somewhere near his own age. The Allied Shinobi headquarters in the Land of Iron. There were no ninja in the Land of Iron, where the power of the samurai dominated. Before the last Great War, the hidden ninja of the 5 great villages had held their meetings in this shinobi-free land, meetings which later became the alliance of the 5 great nations before morphing into the current Allied shinobi forces. Given that the Land of Iron was the birthplace of this continental alliance, they had decided to build its headquarters there, and ninja from each village, with a focus on the 5 great nations, came together in this building, working day and night to develop the world of ninja. The 10 people gathered there with Shikamaru were the rising stars of their villages, including candidates for the next Kage ninja. The meeting was a place where those responsible for the next generation could discuss the future of the shinobi world. In addition to Shikamaru and the others, Chairman Chojuro, Temari from Sunagakure, and Omoi from Kumagakure were in attendance. Shikamaru had been given the job of leading the gathering. It wasn't something he had volunteered for, he had simply been nominated by everyone else in the room. Shikamaru? Chojuro said, worried about the still silent Shikamaru. He cleared his throat and looked around at the assembled group before opening a heavy mouth. Doesn't look like we have anything new to put on the agenda. I really hope our meetings will continue to be as relaxed as this one, he said, standing up. All right, everyone, I'll see you again in a month. He collected the papers spread out over the round table, tucked them under his arm, and turned his back to the others. Baffled by their leader's curt attitude, the attendees began to trickle out of the room. He walked matter-of-factly down the long hallway, cold white walls extending ahead and behind. Many ninja were busily hurrying along, but their footfalls made absolutely no sound. They were ninja. An audible footstep was an absurdity. This level of movement control was the first of the most baby of steps at the academy. Oi! A voice called to Shikamaru from behind. He clicked his tongue imperceptibly. The voice belonged to the person he least wanted to speak with at that moment. Ignoring it, he kept moving forward. Shikamaru, hold up. The voice beat at his back, threatening to send him flying. What? He turned just his head to look at the woman over his shoulder. Temari from Sunagakure. Her hair was shorter now than it had been 2 years ago, and she had pulled it back into 2 bundles on either side of her head. Her eyes were gentler now than they had been, set in a fairly adult-looking face. But given that she was older than Shikamaru, her face didn't just look grown up, she was actually already a very fine adult. What's going on with you? She stared at Shikamaru with eyes that drooped somewhat more than they used to. What do you mean? You've been weird lately. Tamari's slender hand reached out to Shikamaru's shoulder and pulled him around to face her. What a drag. The words made it all the way to his throat before he managed to desperately swallow them back down. I mean your attitude at the meeting there. You just sit there with your mouth shut. Everyone gets nervous, the whole place tenses up, you know. It does? You didn't notice it? Tamari's eyes grew wide. What happened? Nothing. It's something you can't talk to me about? Tamari's hard gaze hurt. In the 2 years since the Great War ended, Temari had been a good and understanding partner in their work on the Alliance. She shared his desire to keep the shinobi from fracturing into factions once more after they had finally come together in the face of a powerful enemy. She had rallied the Allied forces with him. The strong bond between Naruto, seen as a candidate for the next Hokage of Konoha, and Gaara, the Kazekage of Sunagakure, also played a part. The relationship between the two villages was extremely good, even among the 5 great nations. With these kinds of outside factors also at work, Shikamaru and Temari each recognized the other as their greatest ally in the alliance. Something's happening in Konoha. She had fairly good insight. However, her shot was a little off. Nothing was happening in Konoha, although it was true that they were trying to take care of the situation with only the shinobi of Konoha. So Temari was half right, half wrong. The basic policy of the alliance was that matters relating to the life or death of shinobi themselves exceeded the framework of the villages and should be shared with the entire group. What Shikamaru and Kakashi were attempting to do was in very clear violation of this policy. Even so, he couldn't say anything. Getting the alliance involved now and stirring up trouble with the Land of Silence was not a good plan. "I'll handle it." His resolve hardened. "Is there anything I can do?" "There's not." Temari dropped her eyes at Shikamaru's curt reply. "Okay," she muttered, lifelessly. In the next instant, the brief look of sadness on her face changed to anger. It was all he could do to take a breath. He had no room to dodge. Before he knew it, Shikamaru was flying. He tumbled down the hall a few times before ending up on his backside in a seated position. The right side of his face swelled up, bright red. Stroking his hot cheek, Shikamaru looked up at an indignant Temari glaring down at him. "I never actually thought I could have misjudged you so badly." Her angry yell turned into a powerful wind, pushing up against his face. "I am sorry," the words were unconscious. He unthinkingly took on the persona of his father stumbling home in the morning, only to get yelled at by his mother in the entryway. Taking long strides, Temari passed by Shikamaru and disappeared, her eyes slightly damp. "Infinity, you haven't even touched your food," Choji said, sitting in front of him and puffing out both cheeks like a chipmunk. They were at a yakiniku place. Ino was sitting beside Shikamaru. Both of his friends had become serious adults over the last 2 years. Choji was as chubby as ever, but his eyes were fearless now, and he had grown a beard of all things. Ino let her hair grow ever longer and wore it unbound, which made her look a fair bit older than her years. "Did you eat before you came?" Choji's cheeks sank in, his throat moved up and down, and the meat fell to the bottom of his stomach. "Shikamaru and I both had our growth spurts a long time ago, so we don't need to shovel food into our faces like you do." "No way." Choji's eyes grew round. Unthinkingly, Shikamaru laughed out loud. A gentle wind blew through his heart. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. "Why would I eat something when I know I'm coming to have dinner with you guys?" he said, reaching out to the grill with his chopsticks and grabbing a piece of meat on the verge of burning. "I was cooking that," came Choji's angry yell. "Okay." They had danced this particular dance who knew how many times before. In a familiar gesture, Shikamaru put the piece of meat back and turned his chopsticks to the beef rib next to it. He glanced at Ino out of the corner of his eye. She nodded, and so he took the rib and set it on his small plate. "It's been a long time since you asked us out," she remarked. "True. And lately, you guys only hang out with me when I ask you out, so." "You're super busy, Shikamaru, with alliance work, supporting Lord Hokage. We can't take up all your time or anything." Eyes slightly cast downward, Choji puffed his cheeks out. Yeah, but still, on the one hand, he was honestly glad they were concerned about him, but he was also sad there was this distance between them. Now that he was grown up, he couldn't do whatever he wanted like he had when he was a kid. Things were different now. The days when he would meet his friends after the academy lessons and play until it got dark were over. In the same way that he had responsibilities with the alliance and in Konoha, Ino and Choji were also quite valued as capable chunin who had made it through the Great War. They could talk all they wanted about how busy Shikamaru was, but the fact was they weren't in any position to take time whenever they wanted to either. Still, when he said he wanted to see them, they just came and hung out without another word. They were the best friends. What's wrong? Ino asked Shikamaru, tilting her beer mug back in a masculine fashion. Nah, it's nothing. I just wanted to talk with you guys is all. Shikamaru brought the meat on his plate up to his mouth. Oh, that all? Ino didn't ask him anything else. Choji kept shoving bits of cooked meat into his mouth, the smile never leaving his face. The back and forth of easy conversation. The way Choji ate. Ino's love stories. And memories of Asuma. His distance from the two of them shrank. He almost went back in time to the self he had been when they first came to this restaurant with Asuma. Back then, every other thing he said had been what a drag. Looking at Choji and Ino all grown up, Shikamaru whispered in his heart that they could never go back to those days. Infinity he walked home alone. In the end, he hadn't been able to tell them. If he was going to go to the land of silence, he had thought it would be with them, which was why he'd invited them for yakiniku. But when he looked at their smiling faces, he couldn't bring himself to say it. The road he was about to step onto was dark. To save Konoha, the Alliance, and all ninja, he was going to kill a man. He wouldn't be fighting tall and proud and winning. He would be killing in secret. Assassination. Which was not all that remarkable for a shinobi. Once you grew up, you understood that this sort of thing too was necessary in the world. But the fewer people who got their hands dirty, the better. He couldn't bring himself to drag Choji and Ino into the darkness. Guess it's the Ambu, after all. There wasn't a single star in the night sky to which he raised his face. Konoha Chapter 4. Shikamaru was in Kakashi's office. The sixth Hokage was busily scribbling away, surrounded as always by a mountain of documents scattered about at random, free hand held up as a signal for the younger man to wait until he was finished. Through the open window on the other side of the Hokage, Shikamaru could see the streets of Konoha. The town had a calm air, lit up by the bright midday Sunday. Sorry to make you wait, Kakashi said, slapping bundles of papers together on his desk. So what did you need? It's about the land of silence. Oh, that, Shikamaru still hadn't reported on the Alliance meeting of the other day. There wasn't anything he particularly needed to call attention to, so he simply left it. Apparently, Kakashi had been anticipating the meeting report. The Alliance is the same as always. It's staffed with capable people. There's nothing to worry about. You're one of those capable people, you know. Am I really, in the end? Am I really the person assigned to be Konoha's representative? You really plan to go? Yes. Kakashi let out a sigh. Do you need to go? Sai's been captured. And there are people there who defected from the village or who went missing in the Great War. We have to find out whether they're staying there of their own free will or if they've been captured by this Jingo. Seems like you're decided. He said nothing, but simply nodded. Understood. Closing his eyes, Kakashi shook his head from side to side before looking at Shikamaru once more. I won't say anything else. So who are you going to take with you? You're not planning to go alone, are you? Could I be given 2 members of the Ambu? Oh. Kakashi placed his elbows on his desk and rested his chin on clasped hands, his eyes serious. You don't want Ino or Choji? The Ino-Shikacho combination is effective in above-board fights, but is not appropriate for missions such as this. Because it's an assassination. And infiltration is a large factor in this as well. If possible, I want people who can hide their chakra. Kakashi lowered his eyes and considered the situation. As someone with a background in the Ambu, he was well versed in the state of affairs over there. He seemed to be taking in Shikamaru's request and listing candidates in his head. You won't be the one to strike the final blow. I intend to restrain the target with my jutsu. Then you'll need someone to actually take him down, Kakashi said, anticipating his words. Shikamaru had in fact been thinking the same thing. Two members of the Umbu. One a shinobi who could mold chakra to hide Shikamaru's presence, and the other a ninja with a jutsu to actually shoot the target down. You'll need the right people. Thank you. I'll arrange it immediately. Don't you have other work to do first? Nothing more urgent than this matter with you, Kakashi replied, and Shikamaru felt the immensity of being Hokage. The Hokage coolly judged the seriousness of any situation and made a prompt decision. And because he did, the ninja could use their abilities to the fullest for the sake of the village. It was something Shikamaru couldn't possibly do. He had never once wanted to be Hokage. But it would indeed be a lie to say there wasn't something there he yearned for. The still young Shikamaru felt frustration at the fact that he couldn't go up against the largeness of Kakashi as a man. I'll have the two of them return right away. Can you wait a little longer? I'd appreciate it if we could do this as soon as possible. I know. Smiling, Kakashi stood up. He turned his back to Shikamaru and stared out the window. You don't have to take on a burden like this, you know, he murmured. Shikamaru didn't answer. Take on a burden? Maybe he was. Before he even realized it, Shikamaru had ended up carrying all kinds of things on his back. Even though he thought anything and everything was a hassle, he grabbed onto all sorts of things in a way that was actually unlike him, things that were so heavy he could barely carry them. But he still couldn't bring himself to let go. He was scared. He had the feeling that if he threw it all away, he wouldn't be him anymore. He had always found things a drag. If he put his load down for a minute, would he be able to pick it back up again? Would anyone need him anymore? The thought frightened him so much he could hardly stand it. I'm going to tell you what I really think. Flickers of lightning snaked out from Kakashi's left hand in the air. You want to toss aside all your obligations as Hokage and go to the land of silence right now. Shikamaru could hear Kakashi's heart screaming that he wanted to drop everything, go to the land of silence, and eliminate Django himself. But the position of Hokage and all the responsibilities it entailed were not so easily abandoned. I just feel bad for putting all this on your shoulders. Kakashi sighed. Naruto and I and everyone from our year, we're all in positions of responsibility now. You don't have to carry everything on your own shoulders anymore. Right. The lightning melted into the sunlight. Kakashi turned around. Shikamaru, what does it mean to be an adult? Please don't ask me things like that. Infinity, I'll come again, Shikamaru said, turning his back to the tombstone. The stone had Narashikaku carved on it. His father's grave. After the meeting with Kakashi, his feet had naturally brought him to the cemetery. What does it mean to be an adult? He had the feeling the answer to Kakashi's question was here. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, his father had been in the Alliance headquarters with the Five Kages. When the fighting grew more intense, the Five Kages headed out to the front line, and his father took command of the entire army alongside Ino's father, Inoichi. After awakening 10 Tails, Obito launched a Biju bomb at the headquarters with the intent of throwing the entire army into chaos. As deadly shells rained down on them, Shikaku continued to give orders to the army until the very end. He was a ninja up to the moment of his death. No. The truth was, for an instant before he died, Shikaku was a father. However, the only one who knew that was his son. What is an adult? Shikamaru wondered. He said his farewell to his father's grave, and his feet turned toward his next destination. His master's grave. Sarutobi Asuma. Although he was of the same lineage as the third Hokage, Asuma refused the path of the elite in favor of taking a stand on the front line. Shikamaru came of age as a ninja under the tutelage of Asuma after graduating from the academy. With his good friends Choji and Ino, he tackled mission after mission, trying to catch up to his master. No matter what kind of difficult situation he found himself in, Asuma never lost his cool as he casually slipped a cigarette between his lips. He was Shikamaru's hero. And now Asuma was no longer of this world. In the fight with the Akatsuki, who had been secretly maneuvering to take over the world, Asuma had died so that Shikamaru could live. Understanding that they had no hope of defeating the Akatsuki, Asuma had wagered his own life to protect Shikamaru and his friends. He too had died thinking of other people right up until his last moment. Shikamaru didn't yet have anything that he would sacrifice his own life to protect. The people of the village and his friends were definitely important to him, but he felt like it was different from how his father and Asuma had been so fiercely protective. In that sense, maybe Shikamaru was still not an adult. Maybe he was simply a child held captive by the ambiguity of the word adult itself. In which case, maybe Kakashi was a child too. However, Kakashi already had something he would give his life for. To the Hokage, all the people of the village are your children. The words of the third Hokage, Hiruzen, Asuma's father. Kakashi had probably been a grown-up at the moment he chose a life as the Hokage. Shikamaru didn't know what was what anymore. Shika. A carefree voice reached his ears, jolting him out of his meditations. Something was tottering toward him, a perfectly round baby, jerking perfectly round arms and legs out awkwardly in all directions. The baby was singularly focused on reaching Shikamaru. Mirai. Shikamaru called the baby's name. His voice naturally grew brighter. His cheeks slackened, and a smile played across his lips. Yeah. When Mirai reached Shikamaru's feet, she hugged him with short arms. Shika, she said, in the same tone as before. Clinging to his legs as she looked up at him, Mirai's grin was so wide it almost blinded him. He felt his frozen heart melt in the face of that smile like the sun. It's been a while, Shikamaru. Master Kurenai. I'm not your master anymore. You can stop calling me that, the woman with black hair said with a smile. Sarutobi Kurenai. A jonin who had led Shikamaru's class at the same time as Asuma and Kakashi. Now, however, she was devoting herself to being Mirai's mother. Asuma's grave? Yeah. What about your father's grave? I was just there. Even as Shikamaru and Kurenai talked, Mirai was nuzzling his legs with her face, still clinging to him with a smile. Shika. I saw Papa now. His heart warmed as he watched her struggle and push to communicate with her childish vocabulary and unmastered grammar. Be this child's teacher. He had promised Asuma and Kurenai he would. Is that so? You went and saw your daddy? Shikamaru said, crouching down, and Mirai nodded in delight. Apparently, she was thrilled he had understood what she said. What clever girl you are, Mirai. He patted her head, and the feel of her soft, tufty hair came through the palm of his hand, a gentle breeze blowing through his soul. You hurry and get big, okay? You really do love Big Brother Shikamaru, don't you? Kurenai said, and Mirai nodded so hard she stumbled forward. Shikamaru held out both hands to keep her from falling over from the weight of her own head. I can't die for this kid either, huh? That's right. Mirai said, in perfect timing with his thoughts. Thanks. He picked the little girl up. Looking up at her as she squealed with vibrant laughter, he felt it once more, powerfully, I can't die. Konoha Chapter 5. A cat and monkey with white faces stood before him. They were only animals from the neck up, however, from the neck down, both were human. On top of form-fitting, jet-black clothing, they wore the recently redesigned Konoha vests. The old vests had pockets on both sides of the chest to store scrolls or ninja tools, but those had been taken out of the current version, and the end result was fairly simple. These vests were for a time of peace, befitting the end of the Great War and an era of cooperation among the villages. Holes like deep caverns sat in the places where the cat and monkey faces should have had eyeballs. The mouths were shallow, upside down versus the ends cutting into the cheeks. The cat had detailed red coloring below the cavernous eyes, while the monkey had a thicker red shadow on its brow, so that its eyebrows looked turned up in anger. Both had their hands pulled back and clasped together behind their hips. Both sets of dark caves were turned on Shikamaru. I think these two will meet your expectations, Kakashi said, seated behind the desk. The cat and monkey stood on either side of him, the cat to Shikamaru's right and the monkey to his left. Their heights were drastically different. The monkey was a little taller than Shikamaru's 176 centimeters. In contrast, the cat didn't even reach his shoulder. So the monkey's a man, the cat's a woman. It was clear from their builds. Take your masks off, Kakashi said, and both reached up to their faces. The white monkey and cat's faces were peeled off like thin skins, revealing the human faces below. It was an Umbu custom to wear the white masks of animals. Because the bulk of the work they did was behind the scenes and dark even compared with other missions, things like assassinations and schemes and fomenting unrest in other countries, they had an almost visceral dislike of their identities being known. The majority of people in the village had no idea who belonged to the Umbu. There were any number of stories about everyday people nonchalantly going about their everyday business actually being members of the Umbu. The man is Ro. The woman is Soku. As Kakashi spoke, the two Umbu ninja turned toward Shikamaru and bowed slightly in greeting. A girl this age, like, unthinkable, Soku said, cutting Shikamaru's muttering off. In the world of the shinobi, ability is, like, everything. I won my seat with the Umbu through my own, like, abilities. Exactly right, Kakashi agreed. It wasn't hard to see why Shikamaru was surprised. Soku was childish. He was certain she was at least 5 or 6 years younger than he was. He wouldn't have been surprised to learn that she had only just left the academy. Her cheeks, still cherubically plump, were somewhat red, and her thin lips were firmly pursed in a way that made him feel the tenaciousness of her will. Her fine eyebrows were raised at a severe angle, the eyes below them shining with fiery self-confidence. Her face vaguely reminded him of Temari when they were little. Not long after Hinoko left the academy, we noticed her talents and scouted her for the Umbu. She's only 14, but she's already been on a number of missions, and people inside the Umbu have total faith in her. It's not good to judge people on how they, like, look. And Lord Hokage, I told you not to call me by my real, like, name, Soku said, puffing up her cheeks a little. Hinoko. That's a really cute nah, he said, and Soku disappeared. In the blink of an eye, an orange nail touched his forehead, and he caught his breath. I, like, hate being called by my name. I'd like you to be careful about that. Soku's index fingers pressed between his eyebrows crackled with static, sounding like an extreme miniature of Kakashi's lightning blade. Chakra burst from the top of her finger. Behave yourself, Soku, said the man who had been wearing the monkey mask. His name's Ro. Thick eyebrows, square jaw, he glared at Soku with stubborn, single-lidded eyes. This kind of thing is, like, key in the beginning. The one thing I'm, like, not interested in is being written off as a kid. Sorry. I'll be careful from now on. Shikamaru apologized. There was no need to make this situation worse, not to mention that he had no time to indulge the girl's obstinacy. Soku shook her head, orange hair tied up on top of it, and shifted her gaze from Ro back to Shikamaru. As long as you understand. Leading her back carelessly wide open, Soku stomped over to her original position and clasped her hands behind her once more. Ro was able to freely change the amount and quality of chakra in himself, and in anyone he targets, Kakashi said, and Ro nodded slightly. Does that mean you can actually increase chakra? Sharp question, Kakashi noted. It's a modification of the chakra from the point of view of what others perceive. Thus, even if my humble self were to multiply Lord Shikamaru's chakra, your actual fighting power would not be any greater. A misapprehension would simply be generated in anyone with a perception of you. In other words, mine art takes no form without the relationship between the two opponents. He had a slightly old way of speaking. Combined with his craggy look, he came off like a samurai. So you're able to change the amount of chakra, Shikamaru said, nodding in agreement with Ro's explanation. Does that mean it's possible to eliminate it completely? It is. Ro looked to be over 40 from any angle. He had to have been at least 20 years older than Shikamaru. It is also possible to allow you to determine any target and thoroughly sniff out the quality and amount of the target's chakra. Words like sniff out felt fairly out of place coming from this man in his formal speech. I think this is the optimal jutsu for hiding? Kakashi interjected. I'm sure it'll be fine. And the young lady here? Shikamaru said, looking at Soku. The phrase young lady made her thin shoulders twitch upward. Apparently, she hadn't managed to fully shed her childish self just yet. He couldn't tell yet if this would be a strength or a weakness for this shinobi. Maybe it's better if you just show him? Kakashi said. Soku nodded before turning her back to Shikamaru. The index finger of her raised right hand pointed out through the open window behind Kakashi. Shikamaru's eyes noticed a sparrow flying along at the end of the invisible line extending from that finger. My weapon is a chakra needle, Soku murmured as a flash of orange light shot out of her hand. The sparrow was perfectly hidden in the shadow of the large pillar between windows. There was no way Soku could hit it if she released her chakra at that moment. Her chakra would hit the pillar instead and cut into the wall. But no mark appeared on the pillar. And yet the sparrow outside emitted a high-pitched cry. Shikamaru raced over to the window. Leaning forward, he stared at the ground below the area where the sparrow had been flying. The sparrow appeared to be dead. Appreciate it if you didn't, get the wrong idea. I don't, needlessly take lives, Soku said, standing behind him. At the same time, the sparrow abruptly got up and danced off high into the sky. Pierce the bit the chakra activates, so that sparrow's several times livelier than it was before. What about the wall? Shikamaru asked, taking his hand off the windowsill and turning around. The girl, still not finished growing to her full height, licked her thin pink lips while grinning innocently. Once I aim and set my target, even if it leaves my field of vision, the chakra needle will, follow it wherever it goes. My needle won't stop until it pierces its target. With Rose Jutsu, they would erase their chakra, sometimes transforming it while infiltrating the enemy. And once they got nice and close to Django, Shikamaru would seal his movements with his own suffocating darkness. Then Soku could determine her target and deal the killing blow with her chakra needle. It would be fine. They could do this. Can I ask one thing? He said to Soku, as she looked up at his face and the daring smile spreading across his lips. What? Can you do something about that thing? Infinity, they're coming. Them. The Oto ninja. Orochimaru's underlings. No. When did they start chasing me? I'm the one chasing them. There are people I have to save. Uchiha Sasuke. That creep manages to do everything perfectly. But he's still my comrade. I am totally going to save him. It's my first time in charge. Failure is not allowed. My friends are being killed. Choji, Kiba, Neji, and Naruto. I'm the only one left. I'm surrounded by Oto ninja. They're sneering at me. I'm sorry. Everyone, I'm sorry. I won't fail again next time. So please, don't die. Please. Awakened by his own echoing shout, Shikamaru practically leapt up from his futon, his whole body drenched in sweat. A dream. His first mission after passing the Chunin selection exams. The mission in which he had rescued Uchiha Sasuke when he was about to go rogue due to Orochimaru's machinations. Joining him were his classmates and Neji. As they pursued Sasuke, his friends dropped away one after another until, in the end, Shikamaru himself chose to entrust everything to Naruto for the final battle with the Oto ninja. As a result, Sasuke left the village, and all of his friends were injured. The first mission he had faced as a Chunin, as a leader, ended in failure. He put his palm to a forehead wet with sweat and took a slow, deep breath. Why a dream like that? He had never actually seen that scene before, although the scars in his heart from that time still lingered even now. Whenever he felt to criticizing himself, it was the one incident he always remembered as his own greatest disgrace. He had never been backed into a corner the way he had been then. Dreams were supposedly the manifestation of the deep psyche. So then, am I being backed into a corner? It's okay. It'll be fine, Shikamaru. Uncharacteristically reassuring thoughts turned into words spilling from his mouth of their own accord. His heart hammered in his chest. It didn't look like he'd be getting back to sleep tonight. He departed when the sun rose in the morning. End of chapters 3, 4, and 5. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.